Cells. You are made up of trillions of them. Cells are the basic building blocks that make up people and all other living things on this earth. But there's one type of cell in particular that stands out from the rest. HeLa cells. But what are HeLa cells? Before we get into that, let's backtrack a little bit and talk about cell cycle regulation. When a cell wants to replicate itself, it goes through mitosis. In every cell cycle, there are checkpoints that act as surveillance mechanisms that monitor the order of the cell at each of the 4 phases. The 4 phases include the G1 phase, the synthesis phase, the G2 phase, and the mitosis phase. This is the phase where it has its own phases within itself, but this is where the cell separates its DNA into 2 sets. Beginning with the G1 checkpoint, the cell is asking itself if it needs a new cell, is this cell even healthy, and are there enough nutrients to divide? If the answer is yes, the cell passes into the synthesis phase. The next checkpoint is in the G2 phase. Here, the cell asks itself if the DNA copied correctly. If so, the cell goes on to mitosis. If not, the cell will undergo apoptosis, or another word for programmed cell death. The last checkpoint is in the mitosis phase. Here, the cell is asking itself if the DNA lines up in the middle for cell division, and will each cell get the same amount of DNA? If the cell passes, the cell can successfully divide. If not, apoptosis. Well, how does this relate to HeLa cells? Well, HeLa cells are special because they have a unique trait that lets them grow and replicate again and again. See, in many diseases like cancer, cells go through proliferation. This uncontrolled proliferation is driven from a self-sustaining signal from the cells to keep growing without end. Cancer cells also have the ability to evade apoptosis, which is how tumors grow. HeLa cells have the ability to keep on growing and growing while evading their own death. This is why they're sometimes referred to as the immortal cell. Now this all sounds super cool out loud, but you might be wondering to yourself, what's the significance of all of this stuff? Well, the truth is that HeLa cells have an abundance of ways that they've advanced medical research, including the testing of salmonella and leukemia, along with the poliovirus, HPV, and COVID-19 vaccinations, and so much more. Although these breakthroughs in medicine are great, I can't give all the credit to all those scientists. I have to give it to the one who started it all, Henrietta Lacks. In 1951, Henrietta visited the Johns Hopkins Hospital for vaginal bleeding. However, they ended up discovering a large malignant tumor in her cervix, where the cells would double every 20 to 24 hours. Although Mrs. Lacks unfortunately passed away that year, her cells continued to make an impact all over the world, and currently Johns Hopkins has done more to work with the family and members of Henrietta's family to respect them, their personal interest, and their privacy. And that's HeLa cells.